Thom Hartmann here on the news. You need to know this. Even banksters are starting to worry about our dysfunctional Congress. The Financial Times is reporting today that some of the biggest banks on Wall Street are cutting their use of U.S. Treasuries, the IOUs our government sells to finance our nation's debt. But as Republicans fight harder and harder to not raise our debt ceiling, banksters worry that the resulting default could send shockwaves through the Treasury bond market, devaluing investments around the planet. That's why Wall Street is dumping treasuries and increasing their cash holdings to prepare for a worst-case scenario. When U.S. treasuries are now too risky for even banksters to invest in because of Republican extortion tactics in Congress, then we're all in trouble. Corporate profits are higher than ever, while working wages are still scraping the bottom. J.P. Morgan Chase released a new projection today showing that corporate profits are expected to surge up 10% clear through 2013. The higher profits are thanks mostly to increased sales overseas. Meanwhile, a panel of economists at the Wall Street Journal have downwardly revised their projections for American job growth over the next year and now say that persistent unemployment is the biggest threat to the economy. Labor costs, or how much corporations are spending on their employees' salaries, are actually down 2.3% since the recession began, meaning corporate profits are not trickling down to workers. A survey of the last 9 economic recoveries in American history shows that labor costs are actually on the rise at this point in a recovery. Unfortunately, in our new Reaganomics trickle-down economy, we're breaking the mold and screwing over workers. In the best of the rest of the news, the United States Senate is broken. So far this year, the Senate has only held 87 roll call votes, a far cry from the 205 votes it placed at this point in the last session of Congress back in 2009. To fill that time, the Senate has resorted to endless quorum calls, a mundane procedure of calling the roll for senators. 1/3 of all the time that senators have spent on the floor of the Senate this year has been devoted to "Are you here?" quorum calls. As the Senate's official historian quipped, it's just a matter of keeping the lights on when the customers aren't there. Now that a minority of Republicans have transformed the Senate to require a supermajority to pass everything, from major pieces of legislation to judicial nominees, the Senate can no longer function. Of course, this plays right into the hands of the Republican Party that's trying to crash the economy for political gain before the 2012 elections. As long as the Senate can't pass legislation to stimulate the economy, then everything is going according to plan. More Wienergate photos were released over the weekend, and the Democratic leadership is throwing one of their own under the bus. Both House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz lined up behind the Republican Party and called on Anthony Weiner to resign. Weiner initially said he will not step down, but does plan to seek treatment. However, a source of the New York Daily News reported yesterday that due to the growing calls for his resignation from colleagues, Weiner is now considering leaving office. That's despite the fact that a wide majority of voters in his district want him to stay, and despite the fact that Senator David Vitter, who actually did commit a crime by ordering up prostitutes from the Senate floor, is still in office to this day. When a Republican goes down in scandal, the Republican Party protects their own. But unfortunately, when a Democrat steps in it, the Democratic Party looks for the nearest exit. I hate to say it, but sometimes it would be useful if Democrats acted more like Republicans. Let the whitewashing of Afghanistan continue. Last year, General David Petraeus touted a successful military operation by special forces in Afghanistan that led to the capture or killing of over 2,500 rank-and-file Taliban fighters in a 90-day period between May and July. But as investigative journalist Gareth Porter uncovered, that number is a crock. Turns out that nearly 90% of those captured Taliban fighters were actually just innocent civilians and were released days after they were captured. It's kind of like how a handful of prisoners at Gitmo were detained just because they were wearing the wrong Casio watch. So is that our new strategy in Afghanistan? Capture innocent people just to boost numbers? Anybody remember the infamous Vietnam enemy body counts that included civilians in bombed villages? This is the worst kind of history to have repeat itself. In more news about just how influential the Koch brothers are, last year one of the billionaire oligarchs, David Koch, wormed his way onto the National Institutes of Health Cancer Board. But it appears that he wasn't working to stop cancer in his new position, but rather, as you would expect, to secure profits for his corporation, the second largest private company in America. Around the same time that Koch was on the cancer board, the National Institutes of Health was debating whether or not to classify formaldehyde, a chemical that causes cancer, as a carcinogen. But considering that Georgia Pacific, a subsidiary of Koch Industries, is one of the nation's top producers of formaldehyde, let's just say Koch apparently stopped NIH's reclassification, despite protests from actual scientists. Coke finally left the NIH Cancer Board at the end of last year, and when you know it, the NIH just released a report concluding that formaldehyde is indeed a carcinogen. Now we know what it takes for scientists and regulators to tell the truth. They have to be Coke-free. Crazy alert. Take it off. Take it all off. Last week, a New York State's court ruled against an Albany strip club. It was arguing it deserves a tax-exempt status. In New York, theaters that host dramatic or musical art performances are tax-exempt. So the manager at Night Movies Strip Club barred alcohol and claimed that, just like the ballet, his dancers are performed art. The club even called for the testimony of an anthropologist who studied exotic dancing to prove that it was art. Unfortunately, the judge didn't agree, and Night Movies was ordered to pay $125,000 in back taxes. Even all the horny guys in Congress, maybe they should be lobbying here next and call it a stimulus bill. Strip club tax exemptions, cash for catwalks. And that's the way it is today, Monday, June 13th, 2011. I'm Thom Hartmann on the news.